Today, I'm going to talk about all my near-death experiences and my faith. You won't want to miss it. I hope you enjoy your time with my messy, beautiful life. Welcome to my messy, beautiful life. If you've ever wondered what it sounds like to have a husky howling and to have a conversation with a husky and think about how loud a house can be, I've recorded it for you. So here you go. Did you call your brother over here? If you're wondering about what me and my husky were talking about, she was telling me how she was very upset with me because I locked her outside. And then she was telling me about how she was very upset that I was in my room and I wouldn't let her come in, and that she really wanted me to sit on the couch with her and pet her and spend some time with her. So that is what she was telling me. I promise you, they talk to you and you can understand what they're saying. It's hilarious. If you live in Minnesota, you are getting very tired of winter at this point. About this time, people are starting to lose their minds and just want to see spring, especially as we watch other parts of the nation start posting pictures of grass or flowers or things like that. I had someone I knew posted pictures of tornadoes, which made me actually grateful for the winter still versus tornadoes, since those are my least favorite things. But here in Minnesota, we're expecting a big snowfall. We have been seeing lots of snow melt recently, and I even saw a little bit of the brown dead grass. However, there is still frozen ice chunks all over the place, about a foot deep at least, if not more. And we are expecting a snowstorm that's supposed to drop between 1 and 2 feet, depending on where you're at. Of course, weather is strange. We live in a day and age where we can predict almost anything and we have access to all this information. However, weather is still something that can be completely different than what we're expecting. So we sit and we wait and we see if we get a gigantic snowstorm here in the next 2 days. Now, this week, I got to go to a Blake Shelton concert. It was really fun. I haven't been to a concert since, I literally don't know when. It maybe has been 10 years. I'm not entirely sure. It was really fun. We had gotten Groupons, and we were at the very top of the stadium. And it's so slanted, it feels almost like a ladder. And there's this person in front of us who was like, "Whoa, come on, get up and dance." And we're all like, "Are you crazy? We're going to fall and kill ourselves." She almost tumbled down the balcony and she got grabbed by the guy from behind, and she continued to be rowdy, and she almost fell a second time. So that was pretty stressful to watch. But she ended up moving further down, and I don't believe she fell to her death. But I just thought, whoa. And then we decided to go get a drink, and the drinks were $17. Holy moly, that is crazy. And maybe it's so that people don't spend very much money and fall off the balcony. I'm not entirely sure. But man, if that's inflation, I don't know. But I must live in a time from long ago when you could get something to drink for $5, not $17. That blew me away. The other thing that was different for me was I looked online to see if you could bring a purse, because we had gone to the Monster Jam last year, which is this big trucks that are crashing and doing all these things. And I had walked pretty far in the freezing cold and then found out I couldn't bring my purse in, and I had to go all the way back to drop off the purse. Well, this time we walked very far from one side of downtown to the other so we could get free parking. And I brought this tiny little purse because on the website it said that you could bring your purse in. We got to the door and the guy says, "Ma'am, you can't bring that purse in here." And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with it? I parked super far away. He's like, "Well, you can go down, these multiple gates to this other one and pay $10 and do where you drop your purse off and you can come back for it." I'm like, no. So we walked around the side of the building. This is so bad. And I cleaned out the purse because I hardly brought anything. And I had my husband hold a few things. And it was this tiny cloth purse. So I shoved it in my pants because my pants aren't that tight. And I'm like, well, now I'll go in with my purse. I tied it around my waist and put it in my pants. And then we made it through security and got in the building and sat down, and I got my purse out of my pants and I refilled it. And the lady next to me goes, "What? That's not fair. How come you have your purse?" And I was like, "Well, because I put it in my pants." She's like, "Oh, that's brilliant. I should have put it in my coat." And so if you think you can stop a woman from bringing her purse in, apparently not. It brings me back to college when one time I bought this drink and when we were in Disney and I spent like $1 million on it and they wanted me to dump it out. And I was like, yeah, no. And I put that in my pants too. So see, ladies, this is why you need to have pants that are just a little bit big and a little roomy so you can hide things in them. Just saying. Not recommending you so you do it, but you can, and I maybe have. Now, the other thing that happened is when we were gone at this concert, I had my 3 dogs home. And I guess they're not used to being alone now that we've been home all the time. And they kind of freaked out. And one of the things they did, which seemed so appropriate, is they found a box of my brand new business cards that I ordered for this podcast. They say My Messy Beautiful Life, and they have the icon of Welcome to the Nut House on it. And they found the box and they shredded it all over outside in the freezing cold. I had to go and collect all of these business cards. I set them out to dry, and then I had to clean all of them and count them. And there was 117 business cards that I hand cleaned. And now I know that you can indeed clean business cards. I have never realized that you can do that before. So good thing I spent the extra money on the plastic cover on the business cards so that I could save them from my dogs who apparently wanted to eat them. The dogs also took the opportunity to shred our trash and spread it all over. And then they are so smart. And they recently started this new thing. I actually just realized it today. They go outside and they play. And then when they want to come inside, they start to pretend to fight. And they make these horrible snarling noises at each other. And then I run down the stairs and I open the door and then they look at me with this like dog grin on their face. And then they come running and come in the house. And so they've realized that if they make a fight noise, like they're going to fight each other, then I will come and I will let them in the house, which cracks me up because I just realized that they were playing me today. The other thing that's happened with the puppers is that my female, I took her to an eye clinic because Siberian Huskies have a 5% chance of getting cataracts in their eyes. So you should bring them in periodically to get their eyes checked. And the local Siberian Husky Club of the Twin Cities, which I'm a part of, offers a clinic once a year. And you can bring your puppers in and get their eyes checked for like $35 a dog, which is great. And both my dogs got to go and get their eyes checked. But when I brought my female in, because everybody knows each other and they're very honest and help you to be good owners, they pointed out how my female dog is getting fat. And I've never had a husky get fat before, so this is a first for me. And I felt so bad because I measure out the dog's food exactly, and I don't give them a lot of extra food. And here she is getting fat. And I just felt so bad for her because I found out that she had gotten spayed. And just like us, she lost her hormones, and just like us other ladies, she started to put on weight. Poor girl. So she's getting all this exercise, and now she has to be on a diet. And she is so mad at me right now because I'll put she was eating 2 cups of dog food a day and was getting fat. So I put it down to half a cup a day, and I feed her. And then afterwards, she just looks at me like, really? And then she lays on the floor and she takes her foot and she puts her dog dish sideways so it's standing up and down and you can see it. And she just lays by it and then she stares at you with her dog dish empty like, hello, it's empty. When are you going to feed me? I'm still hungry. Now, her breeder had recommended giving her green beans in addition because that should help fill up that hungry tummy for her. But I just feel so bad for her. I said, oh, Abby, I know your pain. I understand being another girl, what you're going through. So I'm sorry that you're having to go through this. I will probably have to look at weight management food for her so she can eat more and it'll kind of give her some bulk. But in the meantime, I feel kind of bad for her. One of the things that my family does for laughter and fun is we do this thing called the magic hairball, which it's going to sound disgusting, but it's really funny to us because we're strange. What happens is my kids will go into my bathroom and they clean the hair out of my hairbrush, which is disgusting. It's a hairball. And then they hide it somewhere in the house. And whoever finds this magic hairball, they hide it for another person to find. And I have found it sometimes in a pocket or something like that, maybe even when I've been at work. And then I just bust out laughing because I have this disgusting hairball in my pocket. And I am just telling you this story because I don't know what you do with your family to bring laughter and smiles, but I recommend a silly game or doing something like that because it's something special for your family that you'll always remember and your kids will always remember, and it's something you can always laugh about. I mean, I'm expecting that they'll probably go ahead and put a hairball into my casket someday when they go to bury me. And then, they'll just laugh at my funeral, which would be excellent because laughter is really great. The other thing that happened this week is my son, he's 5, got his stitches taken out of his chin, which is great. And I was so proud of him. He laid so still on the table when they took the stitches out. So every once in a while, as a parent, you get this, wow, I might be doing something right moment in the mix of all the chaos. And I was so proud of him that he laid so still. Now, granted, a little while later, we got home and he had a full-on tantrum and I had to deal with that. But there are these little pockets in these moments where you're like, oh, I might be doing something right. And I'm hoping that you have those moments with your kids too. Something sad that happened to us this week was that our crested gecko, Niblet, passed away. Now, crested geckos are supposed to live 18 years, a very long commitment. And our Niblet only lived 3 years. We don't know why Niblet died. I went into his cage and I opened it up and I tried to pick him up and I screamed because he was dead. And I just was so sad. I don't know if it's that the new house changed the habitat or what caused Niblet to die, but it was sad to lose this crested gecko. And I know if you're not a lizard person that you're like, whatever, but we obviously are an animal family and we'll have to consider if we want to get any more crested geckos. My son wants to get a snake and I'm not entirely sure I want to do that, but I will not take care of a snake. I mean, I will hold a snake and I'm not afraid of snakes, but I'm not going to take care of that. I already take care of 2 gerbils and 3 dogs, and I was taking care of a crested gecko. The other thing, this thing of Niblet passing away got me thinking about death of all things, and I got to thinking about Lumpy, and he is 13 and a half, and last year, probably around this time, he started to have neck pain, and he was screaming really loud in pain. And I thought we were going to have to put him down because he was in so much pain. And I brought him in and we were told that he was going to lose mobility and he had degenerative discs. And I decided to give a dog chiropractic, a try. And they recommended light laser therapy as well. We started doing that and we had a complete change in him. I never ever would have thought that he would bounce back. I was just floored because he was a brand new dog. Now, when we were in the middle of the neck pain situation, we thought we were going to have to lose him. And a breeder friend in the Husky Club had told me about a dog that was available. And that was Archeo. And that's how we ended up with our 3rd Husky, was we thought we were going to lose our old dog. But instead, our old dog rallied. And he was so full of life and running around with the other dogs. Now, this fall, I thought we were going to lose him again. He seemed to become very lethargic. He was crying all the time. I brought him to the vet multiple times and they would say, his blood looks really, really good. He looks really, really healthy for his age. He looks great. Nothing's wrong with him. And I thought, why is he crying all the time? I do not want him to be in pain. Well, I think he had FOMO, which is fear of missing out, because he couldn't go outside with the other dogs because he didn't have the invisible fence collar. I ended up getting him a collar, and he is the happiest dog ever. He goes outside with the others, and he now wrestles around with them and bounces around the yard and runs, and I just can't even believe he's this old guy. I don't know how well he can hear, and he is just running around with these other dogs like he's a puppy. And it just reminds me of how life is so unexpected. And we all come into this world, and we know that if you come into this world with life, then it also brings death. We will all die at some point. Nobody's getting out of here any other way. I mean, everything that has life dies. I mean, animals, trees, plants, us, we all die. And we think we know, or maybe we kind of think in our heads, we may not think we know, but we think, hey, I've got a long time to live. People live 60, 70, 80 years, and we just don't really think about that. And yet it can happen much faster than that. Or we could be the ones who live to be 105 because nobody knows. Just like Niblet, he was supposed to live to be 18 and only live for 3 years. And Lumpy, he just keeps going. And my first husky, he died really young. You just don't really know. And then that got me to thinking about, how many times have you almost died? Have you almost died a bunch of times? Because I have had a lot of near-death experiences. I started to write down my stories, and I thought I could share them with you, and I may have even forgotten some. But I've had so many brushes with death in my life, and I just think, well, it's not my time to go yet. And I really believe that when our time comes, it's our time, and we're here until that point. And we're here for a reason, whether it's to touch somebody's life or to do something for them. And if you're not thinking that way, turn your thoughts around and think about, how can I make a difference or an impact in this world? And it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. It could be a smile to somebody. But you are still here for a reason. If you're breathing and you're listening to this podcast, you're here for a reason. And you will go at the time that is you're supposed to, and not 1 second before that. So here are some of my stories of near death. I have had about 10 near-death experiences in my life that I can remember off the top of my head. The first one happened when I was a small child. It was Christmas time, and I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and there were a lot of chaos and a lot of people, and I had gotten lifesavers, and I was eating a lifesaver, and it got lodged in my throat, and I started to choke to death. Luckily, my dad was able to step in and do the Heimlich and some other maneuvers and was able to get that lifesaver out of my throat and save my life. So that was my first near-death experience as a small child. Next, when I was a child also, there used to be a ride at the amusement park that the cars were like these small little cars, and they would go really fast and then stop, and really fast and stop. And it was like a little roller coaster. And I was riding in it with my cousin, and the seatbelts were not very tight, and it was not very safe. And I was in front of him, and it went really, really fast and stopped at the very top of this roller coaster. And everybody on the ground saw me flying out of the car to my demise, but my cousin grabbed me and pulled me back in and saved my life. So that was my second near-death experience. Then when I was in high school, I was riding in my friend's car, and we were driving down the road, and she decided to pass a car. And to this day, I never like those roads that are one car can go on one side and the other car can go on the other side because of this experience. She pulled into the oncoming traffic lane to be able to pass the car. And there was a car that was coming head on with us. And instead of slowing down and going back into her lane, she instead went to the left on the shoulder and was going, who knows, probably 60, 70 miles per hour on the shoulder on this back road, and then swerved all the way over. I thought I was going to die for sure having that experience. It was so dangerous to have this car coming head on with us and then to ride on the shoulder, which obviously is bumpy and gravel and all that kind of stuff, really scared me. And that was a real near-death experience for me. I also had read an article online about how if you're driving your car and there are two lanes, so you've got two lanes that are going straight ahead, and you can be in either lane, you should be in the right-hand lane, because if any car happens to go on the road and they go the wrong way on the road, they will most often be in that left lane because they will think it's just a two-lane road. And I had read that, and then I ended up on this road late at night, and there was 2 lanes. And I remembered that article, and I went to the right lane, and all of a sudden a car comes flying past me out of nowhere, going probably 55 miles per hour going the wrong way in that left-hand lane. And I thought, if I hadn't read that article, I might have been in that left-hand lane and gotten hit head on. And that was another brush with death for me. There is a time in the Twin Cities where the 35W bridge in downtown Minneapolis fell. It was a major freeway artery that crossed people over the river, and it just collapsed. And they had 13 people that died that day, and they figured there would have been a whole lot more that would have died. But at that time, they were having traffic stopped because they were doing construction. So the cars weren't like driving and then flying over the edge of this missing bridge. At that time, I worked south of the Twin Cities at a hospital, and I left work, and I should have been on that bridge when it collapsed. But that particular night, a doctor who I worked for stopped me in the hall and asked me to help him with something. I stayed late at work and helped the doctor. And then I started driving home, and I saw all of these police cars flying past me in the direction I was going to go. So I detoured through downtown and went a different way home, and I just kept seeing all these trucks and this black smoke, and I had no idea what was going on. And I called my house, and I said, "What is going on? Turn on the news." And then I found out that this bridge had collapsed, and I should have been on it, but I was not, because it was not my time to go. I also this was in the last 2 years, I went on vacation with my family, and we went to the Badlands, which is really pretty and really cool. And we had gotten there, and we were hiking around, and there was a storm. And I don't actually really like storms. I'm scared of lightning. I'm scared of the tornadoes. I get really nervous about those things. And there was a storm, but it was all around us, and where we were was clear. So I didn't really worry about it because I had know about these things because I read up on them. Well, all of a sudden, my mom and our hair just started raising off of our bodies and standing straight up. Kind of like when people are at a science museum and they put their hands on some ball and the energy makes their hair stand up. Man, we thought it was hilarious. I took pictures of me and my mom with our hair just standing straight up. And then we ended up getting in the car and leaving. I found out later that if your hair stands up like that, most people who have gotten a picture like that don't survive, because what happens is the energy in the atmosphere is looking for a path for lightning to be able to connect to the earth. And so as it is looking for its path, the energy can make like your hair raise, and then the lightning hits the people and they die. And there's stories about that. You can Google it and look it up. And I thought, oh my goodness, well, I guess it's not time for my mom or me to die. And we ended up getting COVID right after that. And I thought, I can't die from COVID. We almost just got hit by lightning. This would be dumb to die from an illness when we could have died from lightning. Those are probably the most dramatic stories. There are also lots of little things that have happened where you kind of go, oh my goodness, I should have been in that accident, or I should have been there. I mean, I've been rear-ended by someone going 55 miles per hour. I've been rear-ended and spun on dry land. I have had my sister, when we were driving one time, we were driving down the freeway and our car spun out on an icy freeway, and we landed in the snow, but we were okay. And I mean, being that I have ADHD, I've done some really, really stupid things when I was younger. Probably still have done lots of stupid things. So, like, I don't know, put a fork in a toaster. Hello, you can get electrocuted. Or I was in London once, and my friend was sick. And so I went out by myself in London in the clubbing area by myself. And this guy came and joined me and wanted to hang out with me. And I mean, I could have gotten into trouble there. I gave a stranger a ride home. That was probably a really stupid thing to do. So the ADHD probably does not help me either, but I'm still here. And we had a crazy landing on a plane once. We were flying in, and I don't really like planes either. And I don't know if I don't know why, but I just don't really love flying. And this plane, we were coming in for a landing, and it was like the right wing dipped really far down, and then the left wing went really far down, and then we were rocking. And it was so bad as we were going in for the landing that the pilot actually took off and did another try at landing. And that was really stressful. I thought, are we going to die today? But we didn't. We're still here. And then I was in Florida a year ago with my girlfriend, and we had this golf cart, and we had parked it on this street, or so we thought. And then we got out, we were standing in the water, and this little tiny plane came in for a landing. Well, apparently our golf cart was parked where it shouldn't have been. And this plane came within, an inch of the top of our golf cart. And we were like, we were just in that golf cart. We could have almost been hit by a plane, but we weren't. And we're still here. And I just think of, these are just off the top of my head, all of the different brushes with death. And I'm still here. And yes, I probably am maybe a little more risky because of the ADHD. But I also think that I'm still here for a reason, because you don't just leave sometimes. Sometimes you're here for a reason and you don't even know why. I had a friend that I used to work with, and she had terminal cancer. And she said some words that were super impactful to me. She said, "It's been a privilege for me to have cancer. It's made me a better person. It's made me who I am." She also said that people looked at her with complete sadness because they felt bad that she was going to die. But then she said to me, no one knows when they will die. I might live a long time and they may not. No one knows when they're going to leave this world. The interesting part about that was that she just continued to live on. She lived on way longer than I ever thought she was going to. She just kept going and going and going. And in that season, when she kept going and going and going, I had several people in my life that passed away that I would never have expected them to pass away. I had a mentor that I looked up to who was cleaning windows, and a block of ice, a gigantic block of ice, slid off the roof and crushed him. And there were other people as well that lost their lives in that time when I thought she would have gone first. And I thought, well, that's so impactful. And I thought to myself, I want to live my life to the fullest. I also talked to a person actually at that concert that I went to this week, and she had an interesting story. She said she had some friends that were in Las Vegas when that shooting happened, and the wife had gone into the bathroom to find her husband, and when she went in there, the people that were standing in front of them got shot and killed, and they did not. And I was reading online, and somebody I knew from high school or college posted the story about his life and how he got T-boned when he was a teenager or early 20s. And he died on the scene. He wasn't breathing, and there happened to be a nurse behind him, and she came and resuscitated him, and he lived. He went through a ton of rehab and everything, but he has no long-term problems as a result of that, and he lived. And it was that right person at the right time and God's grace that he was still alive. My brother-in-law, he actually drowned as a child and came back to life. And he can talk about the afterlife because he actually died and had that experience. And I always find that super fascinating to me about the afterlife, because we don't actually know, because we haven't died yet. And it actually kind of makes me nervous or makes me worried, because I've never done it before. Does it hurt? Is it scary? We don't really know. But what we do know is that there are people who have died who come back and tell us great things about the other side. I've read Is Heaven for Real? There was another book that I read. I listened to a book that a local author here in the Twin Cities wrote, and she's a person who does autopsies, I believe, and she talked about all these near-death experiences and dealing with death because she worked around death all the time. Now, this person that I met at the stadium, she was telling me that lots of people at her work, because she's in hospice, they are reaching for their relatives, and they can see their relatives that are on the other side, and they are reaching for them. And I just thought, well, that's so cool, right? And I like to think of that poem about the rainbow and our dogs and meeting them on the other side. And I will read that poem for you. But if you have an animal that's gone before, I believe that they'll be on the other side to greet us in all that joy. And I just feel like there has to be something more than that. Now, for us that are still here, what does this all mean? Because you always hear, oh, live life to the fullest. And I think to myself, well, that's nice. That I'm practical. That's nice. What does that actually mean? Because I still have to do laundry, and that doesn't feel like I'm living life to the fullest as I'm washing clothes or doing dishes. And I think it just means, to me, what it means is just appreciate the people around you. Say, I love you. Forgive people when they've wronged you. And, you can still forgive and you can put up boundaries, but forgiving and then finding the joy and doing that. But I also really believe what this does is thinking about how we can't extend our lives any longer than we're supposed to be here. There's freedom in that. And I believe we should live without fear. We should live without fear and live knowing that we can extend our life, but we can live it full by connecting with people and cherishing the moments that we have, but then also embracing that there are some moments that really stink, like changing diapers, or I don't know, when your dogs mess up stuff, or you get sick, or you go through hard times, or you lose someone you love. All those are terrible things, and there's some crummy things in life, but there are also some really beautiful things in life as well. And that's what I feel like living life to the fullest is. The poem that I was looking for says, when a pet crosses the rainbow bridge, life starts over fresh and new, but sometimes there is something missing there waiting for you. And I think there's a much longer poem, but that was just the cute little ditty that I found, and I thought it was so great. Now, one of the things that I feel the need to talk about, and if you disagree, that is fine, but I can't talk about afterlife without talking a little bit about my personal faith. Now, I was raised Christian, and I'm still a Christian, and I still believe that. But one of the things is I'm incredibly curious. And that means I love to learn about different cultures and different people and different religions and to hear people's stories, because everybody has a story. And one of the things is I had learned a lot about Hinduism and also Muslim and a lot of the other faiths I've learned about by just talking to different people. And one of the things that really stood out to me about the difference was that in a lot of those religions, people are trying to get the attention of their gods, and they are sacrificing, and they are saying, hey, I'm over here, pay attention to me. I've heard it as servant and master. And actually, you can sometimes see this in Christianity as well, in some of the really almost legalistic, where you have to, I have to do this, this, and this, check those boxes, and then I'm going to be okay, and I can get to heaven, which is the one person that was Muslim that I talked about a balancing of scales and trying to do all of the right things and not do the wrong things. And then if you can balance it just so, then you can move into the afterlife. And at the very core of Christianity, it's very, very different. And at the very core of it, the difference is that God came to us. He came to us through Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ came to earth as a man and suffered and lived just like us, and then gave his life for us as an ultimate sacrifice in our place. Whether we're good or bad or doing the right things or doing the wrong things, he gave his life for us. And then he came back to life and that is how we get salvation. So we believe that Jesus came to earth as God, a full God and full man, that he lived a sinless life, died on the cross, came back to life. And if we believe that he is God and we believe this to be true, we can ask him for forgiveness of our sins. He cleans us up and we are new. And you've maybe heard the term born again. And the idea around that is we were once this one way. And when we give our lives to Christ, he comes in and he changes and he transforms us and makes us new. He sets us free. And if you're living in bondage, and bondage means like being tied up or being held to a specific standard, whether you're holding yourself to a standard or somebody else is, or you feel trapped in whatever lie or life that you're in, God wants to set you free. And what that looks like is when you give your life to Christ, you're made new. You get a fresh new start. And he doesn't say you have to be perfect. He doesn't say you have to be, do this and this and this and this. Now, people might tell you that, but that's not what God's asking you to do. What he's asking you to do is to trust him and to love him and to listen and to follow. And you can sometimes feel his presence in your life. I've had some very dramatic things that I have felt and experienced in my life, but there's seasons where I haven't felt anything as well. I've been spoken to through reading the Bible and feeling his presence there. I feel his presence when I sing and worship his name. And the freedom is when you love him and follow him and do what he asks you to do, there's freedom in following his path and not the rules. Again, it's not about the rules. It's about the relationship and knowing him and knowing that he loves you and that you're here for a reason and a purpose. And this life is really hard and it's crazy and sometimes we just don't understand things at all. But we have to believe at our very core that there is still a purpose and that he can make beautiful out of chaos and out of mess. And sometimes we get the opportunity to see that beautiful. And sometimes we just have to have faith that he's going to make beautiful out of our messes and out of the ugly. Now, in a future podcast, I'm going to talk about my son. He has something called pandas. And I have seen God move in different ways through the course of our journey of this terrible, terrible illness. And I have been able to help other people as a result of it. But it's not been easy. It's been super hard. But I tell you what, having a relationship with Jesus Christ has given me the peace and the hope to walk through those hard times. When I felt like giving up, there's been a moment of hope or something comes through and I can continue walking. And I honestly don't know how people walk through this life without having a faith, because life can be so heavy and so hard. And I just really hope that the people around me and the people listening to this podcast, that you can find hope in life. And if anybody doesn't know about this, I would be more than happy to share more about my faith. And I'm sure you'll hear about it in this podcast as well. But I just pray for each of you that God will move in your hearts and your life. And that if you don't know him, you will come to know him. And that you really dig deep. If you don't believe, ask God to show you. Say, you know what, God, I want to talk to you. Kristi says you're real. She says you're not into this and do that and getting praise, getting approval, but that you love me just where I'm at. And you made me and you know the good and the bad in me, and you still love me. And you ask him to show himself to you. And I believe he will. I had a friend who came with me to church, and she's still on her journey and trying to figure out what truth is. But she was from another country, and the guy who was speaking that day happened to be somebody who spoke often in her country and was able to talk to her and just said, you know what? Pray and ask God to show himself to you and ask him what you want. And so we started praying that she would be able to come back to the United States or to be able to stay here because she was trying to get an extension to her visa. She tried and tried and tried and tried and tried and was not able to stay here and had to leave. And it was really hard and it was really sad. And it felt like that prayer had not been answered. Now, in the middle of COVID, when nobody could travel, she got her visa. And she was able to fly to the United States, into California, and start a contract there. And then God opened up the door for her to also be able to fly back and move back to Minnesota where she wanted to be. That was amazing. That was way more powerful than just staying here. He had to move all these blocks for her to get here. Now, she's still on her journey. She still hasn't accepted Christ, but he is showing himself to her in these ways. And I just pray that you would challenge and think about things and ask questions and ask him to show you that, and that he brings you life and he brings you hope, and that you know that you're here for as long as you're here for a reason. I want to end my episode here today praying for you guys, my listeners. Dear Lord Jesus, I just pray right now for every person that is listening to this podcast. Lord, I pray that they would know that they are important and they are loved. Lord, I just pray that you would just help them to live this life the way that you have called them to it, that they would be who you want them to be, and that they would be able to impact other people. I pray if they are on a journey to find you, that you would open their heart and open their eyes, and that they would see you, and they would find you, and they would know you. And I pray that each person would feel your presence in their life, and wherever they are, and whatever struggle or joy or whatever place that they are in, Lord, that you would just walk with them, that you would bring people into their lives that would encourage them, bring them hope, give them direction, that they will have God moments where people just show up in their life. Lord, I just pray for every listener, Lord, that you would just bring the right people to this podcast and that need to hear whatever you've laid on my heart. I pray that you would just be with each person and help them to live every moment that you have given them for good. In Jesus' name, amen. If you have enjoyed listening to My Messy, Beautiful Life, please subscribe and share. If you do not like a particular episode, just fast forward to the next because each one is a little bit different. I hope you find hope and encouragement and joy through the stories that I tell. And if you'd like to reach out with questions or ideas, my email is mymessybeautifulLifeKC@gmail.com. Again, it's mymessybeautifullife@kc.com.